Peace, everybody. Welcome. Once again, I'm your host, Jamal Talib Abdullah Bey. This video would have been lesson number 5, but due to some events that I just learned about, I decided to push it forward and post this one early because today I'll be going over gun charges. So if you know someone who's facing these type of charges or possession of a weapon, etc., stay tuned because I'll be going into detail on this stuff, and I might have to go over some things I already talked about in the other videos since this video is being posted earlier, so stay tuned. So today I'm going over gun charges. We first need to go into what the Constitution has to say about, the right to bear arms. Because when they summons you to court or whatever, or they lock you up for possession of a weapon is different than bearing arms, and we'll go into the definition of what a weapon is and what an arm is. So right now we're going to go into what the Constitution says, which is the supreme law of the land. So the Constitution, the American Constitution Bill of Rights, Second Amendment says, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Right? So we have a right to keep and bear arms. Not a right to have a weapon, but a right to bear arms, you see. And res judicata and stare decisis. So res judicata means a thing adjudicated on. So a thing that was already decided, you see. And stare decisis means to stare fixedly at something already decided. So the American Constitution is something that the people decided is the supreme law. So we're staring at that, so we're looking at that, you see. So we're holding whatever the courts are saying to the common law, to the Constitution, right? So, stare decisis res judicata. A right which is free and open to all is not the subject of a license or tax. Chicago versus Collins, 5-1 NE 907, and Freeburg versus Dawson, 274 F 240. So since it says the right of the people to keep and bear arms, a right is not subject to a license, because a license is a commercial privilege. You see what I'm saying? The only people who are required to have a license are those who whose job requires them to have a firearm on them, you see? Because for the safety of the public and to hold that individual and the corporation that they work for liable, they have to have a license to ensure that they're mentally screened and they had the proper safety and weapons handling as it pertains to their firearm. So it's a public safety instrument, or to ensure that there isn't a public hazard, you see, to hold corporations like the police and other private security companies liable for the safety of the public. So res judicata, stare decisis, a right which is free and open to all is not the subject of a license. Every man is independent of all laws except those prescribed by nature. He is not bound by any institutions formed by his fellow men without his consent. Remember the right to contract. Crugen versus Neal. So by saying that you were in possession of a weapon, they're saying you're in possession of something that's destructive and used for combat. But when you say you weren't in possession of any of that, when they ask you, how do you plead, I would personally say there is no plea under the grounds that it's my constitutionally secured right to keep and bear arms, you see. So now we need to go into the definition of what an arm is and what a weapon is. And I'm going to go through Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition. All lawyers have this. All attorneys have this, all judges have this, right? So we're going to go into what an arm is. Arms. Anything that a man wears for his defense or takes in his hands to cast or strike at another. Arms or coat of arms and signs, it's a sign of honor. You see? So that's what an arm is. So now let's go with weapons. What does it say about weapons? Here's the game. Here's how they get you in their system, you see? Now remember, your nationality is what corrects your political status and your ability to call and to force your rights. So keep that in mind as well. weapon. An instrument of offensive or defensive combat, or anything used or designed to use in destroying, defeating, or injuring an enemy. So when they say that you were in possession of a weapon, they're saying you intended to go to combat. You see how one is a sign of honor, that's your right, and one is something that's used for combat? One's for your protection, bearing arms, and one's to just destroy stuff. You see how they put these words on our people and they make us seem like criminals? And then these so-called attorneys who work for the court. Now let's look up what the word attorn means, because the word attorn means to turn over, you see? So when we think that these attorneys are going to help us, they're actually not, because their first obligation is to the court. Their job is to turn you over. It's your duty to stand on your rights, but you have to know what those rights are. So this class kind of is a way for you to distinguish what your rights are and what commercial regulation they're trying to force on you, which doesn't apply to you, you see? And as I went over in my last video, or the video on the birth certificate, they're not holding charges against the natural person, you. They're holding charges against that artificial birth certificate person, which is a move against your estate. So you'd have to, go into that last video. So we're going to look up what attorn means. A turn. To turn over. So their sole job is to turn you over to the court, who they have an obligation to. Now, in one of my other videos, I was talking about how during the Inquisition, the Inquisitioners would have a panel of lawyers that they would choose from. That right now is called the Bar Association. So that Bar Association is the panel of attorneys that they choose from, who they train, part of their system, to work for them. That's why the word attorney means to turn over, you see. And their sole job is to abandon those who stand up for their rights. So we already know that the system is corrupt, and that's part of the corruption, when we put our trust in these individuals who have an obligation to the courts. So when we go to these attorneys, we don't know that we're hiring a bountyman to turn us over and to speak on that estate. You see what I'm saying? So again, we have the right to bear arms. Not be in possession of a weapon. We have the right to bear arms. So you don't argue whether you had a weapon or not, or I wouldn't, at least. I wouldn't argue if I had a weapon or not. I would argue that I have the right to bear arms, and a right which is free and open to all is not subject to a license or tax, so you can't force me to have a license. You see what I'm saying? Remember, Article 20 of the Declaration on Human Rights, declared by the United Nations, says we have the right to peaceful assembly, and we cannot be forced to association. So if you're going to force me to get a license, I have to associate with a company, and then they have to give me this thing saying I can do something which is already my right. You see what I'm saying? Because a license is permission to do something. You don't need permission to do something when it's already declared that we have the right to bear arms. You kind of see the trick? You see the trick? So there was someone in Ohio I was helping. He was facing carrying a concealed weapon. And then they put, F4, their little subsection 2932 or whatever. And I sent him an affidavit of how he should proceed with that. And if you always look at the summons, it's that one. He says State of Ohio versus, and then it has the homonym that sounds like his name, but is not his name, in all capital letters. And they're moving, and they're holding that instrument to corporate law or private law, commercial law, when this is constitutional law, supreme law, divine law. You have the right to protect yourself. That's what this is saying. No one can tell you how to protect yourself. That's what this is saying. You see? No one can tell you that you need a license to protect yourself. That's what this is saying. You see? So we need to invoke the common law, because the common law is based on common sense. That divine ability that our Creator, whether you want to call, God, Allah, the Great Spirit, Yahweh, Jehovah, whatever, that one source that we all came from gave us all the ability to have common sense. And the common sense is what the common law is. You see, so when you're facing, this is kind of redundant, but I'm saying it for a reason. So gun charges, right? Or weapons charges. Personally, if I was facing these charges, I wouldn't plea anything. So if the so-called judge says, how do you plead? I personally would say, no plea based on my constitutionally secured right that I have the right to keep and bear arms. And our right, which is free and open to all, is not subject to a license, so I can't be charged with not having a license to bear arms. Now, if you're applying that I had a weapon on me, being a Moor, my high principles of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, I don't intend on destroying or going to combat with anyone. That's what I would say personally. You see what I'm saying? So these are some things that we can use, to help us in this corrupt system, which we all know about. And in one of my other videos, when I talked about the felony charges that I helped get dismissed, we'll go into that just so you can kind of see how else you can protect yourself. So let me just grab that real quick. Now this person, she was, this is redundant because I went over in my other video, but based on the severity of the situation, we'll go into it again. She was facing felony charges, and then I'll just go into the first sentence of what we said to the judge, because remember, they take an oath to the Constitution. Now, remember, Declaration of Independence, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, and among these are life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their powers from the consent of the governed. So judges take an oath to the Constitution, and their sole job, state courts like federal courts, have a constitutional obligation to make sure that your rights don't get violated. You see what I'm saying? So I would personally hold that judge or magistrate accountable for his actions. And this is how we did it with these felony charges, right? So we said, and this is it dismissed from the Superior Court, right? And then, so we responded to these so-called charges. We said, in attempts to ensure that I am dealing with a lawfully and legally competent court with prescribed jurisdiction per Article 3 of the Constitution for the United States of America, I rightfully demand to see the judge's oath or affirmation to support and defend the Constitution in regards to this matter. So if you're dealing with so-called weapon charges, you have a right to see the judge's oath. Because since he's deemed to know law, he's deemed to know that you have the right to bear arms. And he's deemed to know that you don't need a license, because since it's your right, it's not subject to a license of tax. And if he violates his oath, that's treason. And if he doesn't dismiss the case automatically, that's conspiracy against rights, you see. And then normally they'll ask you for, just to pay the fine, you know what I'm saying? So that's extortion. And then that's receiving proceeds from extortion. You see, in some of those United States codes are U.S. Code, Title 18, subsection 241, conspiracy against rights, and Title 18 U.S. Code, subsection 880, receiving the proceeds of extortion. And then there's more that you can look up too. Just look up the Title 18 U.S. Codes, and you can hold these people accountable for what they're trying to do to you. See what I'm saying? So this is and here's the proof that we got it dismissed. And I have other videos on regards to this matter as well. But just strictly speaking on this. So key principles again. You have the right to bear arms. It can't be regulated. State courts, like federal courts, have a constitutional obligation to make sure that we don't get violated. You see, and then the judges are deemed to know law, so they have to know this. You see what I'm saying? All this is inclusive of everyday situations, because our people get arrested or whatever, kidnapped or whatever you want to call it, for exercising their constitutionally secured rights. And then they try to say you need a license when obviously you don't. It was already decided that you don't. In the first instance, this is just supportive, but this is the supreme law. You see, this is just additional stuff down here. This is the supreme law of the land. This says this. This says this. You see? So again, if this doesn't apply to you, share it to someone's mother, share it to someone's father, share it to someone's daughter, share it to someone's son, because it might apply to someone that they know. You see what I'm saying? And I'm going to share this on my Facebook, so feel free to tag that person's mother or that person's father or whoever, or their cousin or an aunt and their uncle, and they can contact me, and I can send them information from my book as well as other things that I wrote, and send them pictures from the law book itself and other stare decisis and res judicata, and explain in detail whatever I need to explain. So again, this video is going to be posted early from my lesson series due to the severity of the matter. So Islam, peace, power to the people, let's uplift fallen humanity. Study, study, study. If you ask me what to study next, I'll say study yourselves. Peace.